Let's see how we can make our levels to be objective dependent. Okay, obviously the objectives are going to be separate for each scene. That means that each scene is going to have their own objective game object, which has their own objective manager, which we're going to just call it level objectives. Now, and how you should think of the objectives is pretty much think of them as events. Okay, so you start the game. When you play, when you start first a level, you have two choices. You're either going to, just play right away, or, which is most likely if it's the first time you play this level, play a cutscene, objectives, maybe tutorial. Okay, you can imagine. So as you can guess, there is a lot of different objectives depending on a lot of factors. There is also concurrent objectives. Okay, there's a lot of stuff we can do, but we're only going to cover the basic architecture, or most how you can think of the structure, and we're going to leave it available or open to to modify, and I'm going to show you how you can do this and how you should think occasions like that. So what is an objective? We should think of them as events that are own events, not doesn't have to do anything with Unity events. Okay, so for example, in the example scene I have over here, we have a few objectives. Since this is going to be just an example scene, we're not going to have any cutscenes, any stuff like that. So we're going to go directly on the event that basically creates your player, so the player can actually play. Because as you can imagine, if you are playing a cutscene, then you probably don't need to move your character. So the first event in the list is going to be controller status. We have this as status and not just simply enable or disable, okay, because we can reuse it in case we want. So when we finish another objective, before we actually load another level, we might want to load an event or make him sit there while something happens. Okay, all of these are cases you can do, especially if you understand how the structure works, then it's the simplest thing you can do. Okay, so the first event is going to be this, controller status. The second event will be the actual objective. Okay, so even though we're adding the controller status as an objective, we're not going to count it like it's an objective that it's instantaneous. So basically the player doesn't have to do anything, he just has to play the game, like getting a trophy for participating. Okay, simple as that. So the actual objective will be go to, and the go to is the simplest event you can have is simply go over here. It's controlled by a trigger collider, so when the character or the player enters, that means the event is complete. After that we have the second simplest event there can exist, and you cannot see it right now, but it's going to enable 3 cubes, okay, all based off events, and when the player shoots at them and supposedly kill them, okay, we throw that the objective is complete. The other objective you might see is usually waiting for an amount of time. We're just going to leave it at 5 seconds, okay, and finally the final event will be go to another area. So these three are basically the major 3 objectives you can have, and everything else is pretty much a modification of all of this. So think about it. Even a fetch quest, which basically is go there, come back. Okay, the fact that you pick up an item or whatever doesn't really matter. You just again have to come back. Now, and the final one, after we finish the final one, of course we want to do something. If we do not want to do anything afterwards and make it free roam, okay, we obviously we do not need to add anything else. The objectives are complete, so we do not have to worry. However, in this one we're going to see the final event for a level, which is of course loading a next level. And if on the next level I have this as main menu, if I had this as menu instead of a scene name, okay, it's going to take me back into the main menu. Obviously you can change this and make, you know, into a game over scene and all that, which we're not going to worry about them in here. So in order to handle all of this the same way, okay, we need to have a similar base, or they have the actual same base. And we're going to use inheritance again, and we're going to handle all of them together in the manager. But when we are running behaviors on them, we're going to be overwriting them with their own logic. So for example, controller status has the same base as the go-to area, but each of these simply override the previous logic or the logic they have on the superclass. Now, let's open one of these, and you can see that it takes from objective reference. So the objective reference is the actual superclass or the base class. Okay, call it what you want. And it's the actual class that derives from mono behavior. Okay, because we are doing OOP, okay, object oriented programming, so we can use this. And yeah, and here we have behaviors that we're going to reuse if we want to or if we do not want to. So with start objective and finish objective, we pretty much always know that we want to use this, so there's also no real need to make them into all. I guess you can just skip all this and just add it over here inside the virtual void. But all this does is you will call this from the level objectives, and it will run the start behavior or the finish behavior. Now, actually it's not exactly the same, because you can take one of these behaviors, okay, and override them and add one of these, although yeah, you can just write this on the child class. Anyway, let's leave it at that. Now, in most cases, although in not all cases, we might have objects we want to open and objects we want to close. So we have an array, okay, and we're going to basically have this class, because in case we need to do this in any of the objectives, it's not necessary to do this on every objective. Just on the objectives we might want to do it, so we do not add a special you know, if you have two different types of objectives, then we can just reuse this base behavior. So this is it. This is the base for the objective reference. Okay, it can't get any simpler than that. So let's see the first area, or the first objective, which is go to area. Now, the UI target is what we get on our actual UI, okay, or where the UI element is going to show. So this is the V we see on the UI to tell us that, you know, you need to go there. Okay, and this will also is what is going to be visualized on our other scene we have down here. Okay, obviously this needs to be hand placed, and what we're going to do over here is we're going to override the start behavior of the objective reference, which is basically an empty function, and we're going to use both open objects and close objects, which both are again on the base, which basically are these two. So we want to use these functions for this type of the objective. The other one, we're going to use a new behavior which we only need in this one, and it's the enable UI. So the enable UI, what it's going to do, it's going to go to the radar and it's going to add a track objective. Okay, we've seen this function, and it's basically going to say the go to target will be that one, and it's also a go to objective, so it enables the UI for it. Okay, and when we are finishing the objective, of course we need to remove the tracking object and close and say that it's not a go to objective. So if the next is go to objective is true, then it's going to re-enable it. Okay, it doesn't get any simpler than this. So of course it needs a little bit of setup to do. So what you need to do is, okay, go to area. We have a trigger collider. It's best to just keep it, you don't have to actually keep it underneath the game object, but you can still keep it just to, you know, make sure you are a little bit organized instead of having them anywhere. So this is a trigger collider. Obviously it's a trigger collider, and you can see that the layer is ignore recast, otherwise we will be able to shoot it. Of course we do not want that. And we also have a hook that when the player enters the trigger, we check for an input handler. In theory, well, not in theory, only the player will have an input handler and nobody else. Okay, otherwise you are moving 2 units at a time, which is something you do not want to, probably. And okay, if the input handler is not null, then you go to your level objectives and you call the functions, which we'll see in a bit, which is finish objective. What that finish objective is going to do, it's going to go to the go to area, finish behavior, and on finish, what you have over here, just for now, disable UI. And we have a few other stuff on the level objective over here, which we reuse. And you know, we throw objective complete, so on and so on. Okay, as I said, it doesn't even get any simpler than this. It's pretty straightforward. And what we can also, we have over here, you can see that when this objective opens for the first time, it's going to also open the trigger collider. We do not want to close anything when the objective opens, of course. So yeah, that's about it for the go to area. Now on the objectives, you can see that I have a list, and this is the logical progression, or the progression if you want to. So we have the objective description. You can see that for the control status I just left it empty. There's no need to add anything because it, as I said, is instantaneous. So this is why we also have an is false objective. This goes on a little bit more. Yeah, this is used as a class to categorize your objectives. We will see this in a bit. So if it's a false objective, means that it's instantaneous, or it means it's just going to ignore it as an objective, so it will take it as an event, so it's going to create the controller, or it's going to load a level. Okay, and these two can be empty. You do not need an objective description. If it's finished, of course, means if you finish the objective. If it's checkpoint, it will keep it, and it will store, if you, when you are on the over here, it will actually store the position and rotation. So the next time you load the level, it's going to load from this checkpoint instead of loading from the previous from the start of the level. Okay, let's see the other two cases. And over here in this list, actually we can't see this list, it's objective description. It basically says what you will have to write on the objective description. let's say this class, just so that we are entirely clear to what this class is. Okay, has 3 booleans, the objective reference which we're going to drag and drop, and the objective description. Okay, do not forget to drag and drop. So this, the controller status, is the first one. You just take it and drag and drop it, and so on for the rest one. Kill targets, another even simpler, and you can see that I want to basically open the 3 cubes. When you have later enemies, when we add enemies and all that, we're going to we're going to kind of little change this. We're going to have an AI manager. Okay, and instead of cubes, we will have to add we will have to worry about opening and disabling cubes. Okay, basically. But for now, we will just open these 3 cubes. Of course, you can do it instead of opening them, if you have shooting targets, to play an animation, do something like that. Okay, object close, we do not have anything. Targets down means how many cubes you have shot, and objects to track will basically be the red dots you have on your radar. Okay, and in our case, this is the same as our 3 cubes. So let's go in this. This is a little bit more advanced. Yeah, it's not advanced at all actually. We need, notice where it derives from. Okay, we need an integer to know how many targets we have down. A list of game objects for objects to track inside your level. This will be with the AI. This will be populated automatically, of course, later. And open objects, close objects, and enable UI. Enable UI is somewhat the same as what we have on the go-to area, but we need to make sure we add a few more stuff, and that's why we have this. Now, we could just again make this the enable UI a virtual void and then overwrite it down here, but we're just seeing different approaches. It's not wrong either way, it just depends on what you want to work with. Okay, very simple. Now, so on the enable UI, what you say, you close the go to indicator just in case you had another one somewhere from the previous objective and forgot to do it. Okay, we're basically resetting the values for a canvas overlay, and we're going to find a radar manager, and we're simply going to add for every object we have over here. We're simply going to add we're going to add them into the radar so they can be tracked. When we are disabling the UI, we're going to do the same, but we're simply going to remove them, and we're going to say that we're going to reset again that it's no a go to objective. Check progress, you will see where this goes, and on finish behavior we have game object, objects to open. Okay, game object set active, false, disable UI when we are finishing or we have done the objective. Now, check progress, we call this when we actually kill one of the cubes. So what it's going to check is if our objectives to track count is 0, then that means we've shot all the targets, so we finished the objective. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think I have this targets down 0. Yeah, so this will see that if you do not have any objects you are tracking, then then it's 0. If you want to add something else to check the progress, so for example this is redundant in this case because we're not using this for anything, but if you want to, if you do not want to just kill all the objects, but if you hit 5 all the others retreat, Okay, then you can simply do a check with if target's down, it's higher than 5 or whatever, you know, objective complete, do something else. And okay, this is pretty much it. Let's see the hook. We have our 3 cubes, just a box collider, mesh renderer, because you probably need to see where you want to shoot. And kill targets. Nope. We have a level target script. Okay, again, mono behavior. How many times you hit it. And this is the fast way to know to which objective this is hooked. So if you have multiple of this, okay, you just need to drag and drop it over here instead of going through lists and all that. We can of course automate this, but this is just a little bit more safer. And okay, when you hit something from our bullets, it's going to run this. This is in the ballistics, I believe, and it is. Okay, when you hit something, it's going to run the hit logic. If it's a level target, of course. If it's a player or something that has a state manager, we will see what we're going to do with this. And then it's going to do obviously something else. And let's go. We were over here. No, we were over here, level target. Okay, if it's hit more than 3 times, so at the 4th hit, it basically means you either disable, you know, close it, play it animation, do whatever you want over here. We're going to look onto our hook that if we are tracking this objective, this game object, then we're removing it. Okay, and then we run check progress into our hook, so it looks if you have shoot all your targets or not. If not, then continue the objective, otherwise finish the objective. And we remove this object from our rudder manager. We call for the removal. The rudder manager handles its own remove by itself. Okay, this is, as I said, really basic. To set it up, you just throw it in, you just add the cubes. Let's make another one. Let's make a cube over here. Okay, I can enable, disable. I do not really care about enable or disable. We just simply take this, we add it into the objects to open, and we need to also add it into the object to track. Obviously, you can go into your kill target, and on start behavior, what you can do is, before you enable the UI though, do and let me see, forgot the name, objects to open. Okay, objects to track, add range, objects to open. Okay, so you do not have to, you can even do this now, you can even hide this in the inspector. So it's just going to take all of this and put them into this list. Okay, can't be any more simpler than this. Let's go to the next one, which is weight. Of course, this is the simplest one there is. Okay, start behavior. You open any objects you might have, enable counter, and if the counter is active, you run your update, and you add on a timer, and you call to finish the objective, and you disable, of course, the counter is active, but it's also wise to disable the game object also, so there's no need that this update ever run again. Okay, so we can simply disable the objective, the game object. I believe you do not need any explanation to this. Go to, again, we've seen this, finish level, come over here. This is even the simplest one, start behavior, call the level load, and you just go to your seizure manager and call load level. Okay, Because though we're using inheritance, we can reuse all the logic we have. So it's really easy. We are pretty much, as you can see, we're working smart. So we do not have to worry about writing any more code that will handle every type of different objectives. We are just simply reusing the same functions, but with simply overriding virtual functions. Okay, so let's see where this all handled, and you can see that it's fairly basic. So again, which is our current objective, and we have our objectives, a canvas overlay so that we can update the stuff we have on our canvas. Okay, we've seen the canvas. Take position from profile. This will determine if you are coming from a load scene or from maybe you died or you're coming from another level. So on start, if we check first if we have enabled on the Decision Master the debug mode, and if we have, then we're not running on debug mode, we're not running any objective. You are simply using the debug mode to do fixes on your controller, stuff like that. So we're simply closing this, otherwise we will have problems. And then we find our canvas overlay and we start the coroutine to start the first objective. We wait for the end of frame just so that we know everything else has been initialized. Okay, canvas, other menus, maybe we have something else. Okay, a single frame lost is not really a big deal. And we find the first objective in the list, 0. Okay, so that means you need to have objectives into your scene. And we started, so it's going to go to the very first one, which I just realized we haven't covered the controller status, but yeah, we will see this. It's basically just enables and disables your controller. And okay, it's going to run the first objective, and this is the public function that basically handles if you want to, when you're finishing an objective. So what it's going to do, it's going to go on the current objective and it's going to tick finished. Okay, and it's going to run the behaviors we have when we are finishing the current objective. Objectives in general. Okay, we are not checking if we have, if it's a go to, kill targets, level targets, whatever it is, we're not checking anything, as you can see. Now, if the objective, the current objective, is a checkpoint, then that means we're going to need our own profile. We want to have to, we want our controller basically, and we find this from the controller holder, which we'll see also what this is. And we save target position, the target rotation, we save all of this, the X, Y, Z. Okay, we save the Oilers, and we also save our progression. And we do all this into the player profile. And the way we have set it up to save, the only thing we need to do is on the Decision Master call the save profile, and it's going to save our own profile. So the next time we load, it's going to put the character into these positions and rotation. Okay, so if the current objective now is not it's not the final objective into our list, that means we have more objectives. So we add into our current objective integer, we run the behavior to start for the new objective. Okay, and we turn the false objective to false, we start as false. However, if the previous current objective wasn't the first one, so if the previous current objective wasn't the first one, because the first one is a little bit trickier, okay, we need to update this. Basically, this has to do with if you want to update the UI. So if it's a false objective, there's nothing to add on the UI, so we just ignore it. How we check if there's something or not something to add is if you want to have first objective complete. Okay, and because when you finish an objective, you also get an objective complete. If you got an objective complete when you are just simply creating the controller, of course this doesn't make any sense. So what we need to check is, we check if the previous objective that has finished was a false objective or not. If it was a false objective, we're not throwing the objective complete text. If it was though, if it was a normal objective, we're simply going to say objective complete. Okay, and we have a function on the canvas overlay that opens the objective, and yeah, and this is the callback for when you are finishing the level. This is not really needed if you have an objective that loads another level. Okay, because the other level is going to have its own level objectives, so yeah, it won't be needed. Let's see the controller. Let me open scripts. Okay, it's also singlet. Let's see the controller status. Before we see though the controller status, the objective, and I think we actually might have it on the level dependencies. Let's see. Okay, we have our character holder, which what the character holder is. It just has a prefab, the controller instance, which is the new, in case you want to delete it and create it, it's good to, have a reference to this. So the controller prefab, you need to assign it in the inspector. You can see this also can be reused, so we can just leave it on the level dependencies. Okay, just drag and drop it. You can of course load it from the resources. Okay, I'll leave that up to you. And we have our controller prefab, controller instance, the starting position, and the starting rotation. Now we're going to instantiate the controller, and we're going to assign the sender on the random manager, which of course is going to always be the controller instance. When we want to create a character, or basically place your character, because you first create him and then you place them, and you basically assign the target position, the target rotation. Okay, and if on the level objectives we have that take position from profile. Okay, that means you are actually loading and not moving on or coming, as I said, from another level or an objective or something like that. Okay, we get the profile, we find back our target position and target rotation, we recreate it from the values we have saved on our player profile, and we simply add for any progression we have saved into our for loop, into our profile. Okay, we say the objective is finished, so we finished all objectives up to the progression we have saved, and then we place him on the position and the rotation. It's really that simple. Okay, now we have of course a singleton. However, we're going to do a check just in case there might be few duplicates. So we're going to check if the singleton is null, then it's going to assign it, and it's going to throw it on the don't destroy on load. Okay, so when you are loading a next level, and that next level is going to load its own controller holder. Okay, we do not want to create another singleton and another and another. We're simply going to destroy any other controller holders that are going to try and assign them as our singleton. Okay, this is really basic, as I said, and it is this basic because we took all that time to set up a proper structure. Okay, so even if the first parts of the series was a little bit more boring than usual, okay, they all have a reason. So on the controller status, what this means that we need a reference to the controller holder, and we find this from the singleton. We start on start behavior, controller update status, so it's going to check if there is no if the controller instance is null on your controller holder, it's going to create the character. If you have something on a target position, okay, if you have assigned a transform, then it's going to place your character over there. Else, it's going to simply, you know, no biggie, it's going to just set him up as the default ones. And then it's going to place the character, and then it's going to actually enable the controller instance. Okay, set active, or it's going to set it as this. So you can create the controller, but you can just leave it at false, or disable it. And then it's going to automatically run finish objective on your level objectives. Okay, very, very simple. You do not need to add anything over here. Just make sure you have a target position, which is this, and you want this enabled, so you click to enable this. Now I'm going to save, remove this scene, and I'm going to bring on another scene which doesn't have any objectives, and I'm going to set up one or two objectives depending. Okay, so let's open, let's find a solo. Now later when we do multiplayer, we pretty much want controller status and weight. Okay, and of course in multiplayer we might add this a little bit different, because every multiplayer game is pretty much waiting to finish, otherwise it has to kill everybody. Let's go to scene 2. Okay, I've already have two objectives so that you can move from one side to the other, and it's, well, I only have one, which is create the controller. This is the controller status. Let's call this. And we have the goal 2, which is you go there, and the next one is load the level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, or better yet, instead of duplicating, let's make it from scratch. Create an empty child, and it would have been good if you can see it also. Let's put it over here, and let's place it above this. Let's rename this also go2. Let's create another empty game object, and let's add box collider. Trigger, ignore raycast. Okay, do not forget these two. Let's raise this. Let's open this up. Something like this, I believe, should do. Let's set it up. Let's name this trigger. Now, let's add this go to area. Because this is the first objective, the first real objective, we can't just, leave this open. But let's make sure we drop it over here also. And for the time being, there's no need to have it enabled. So we're going to use it. Even if it's the first one, we're going to just treat it like it's not the first one. Now, we need to add the UI target, and I'm just going to drop a game object, and remember this is where the UI is going to point to, UI target, like this. Drop it on your UI target, and we're done. This is it. When we go over here, it's going to tell you to go back there. Let's add another case. No, we're not done. We forgot to add the go to area hook. Okay, otherwise it won't go on, it's not going to run anything on this behavior. And we can add it over here. You can see we have already the three objectives. The first one is well, you can just write over here create load level, and it's just going to, just for your own categorization. Now let's do a duplicate array. Let's duplicate the first one, and it's not a false objective. I'm going to drag and drop the new one we created, the go-to, and I'm going to write go to shoot range, or whatever you want over here. Okay, let's click its checkpoint. Not that we're going to lose. Okay, and let's create another one. I want this to be on the objectives. Let's place it above the other. Oops. Okay. Shoot targets. And for the targets, let's just create a few cubes or whatever. Let's leave them. Let's make this also a level target. Okay. Let's drop this underneath our shoot targets. Let's add the kill targets. Let's add the hook. Okay, we do not have to do anything else. We only want to add this into this list, to the objects to open. And before we do that, let's just copy paste something like this. Okay, and let's just add this. Now the reason why I'm not adding, I'm not making it that it's it automatically populates the list from their children, is because simply enough these game objects might not even be a children of this objective. Okay, just keep that in mind. And because I do not want this guy to be able to shoot them from here, I'm just going to disable them in the inspector. We have our shoot targets, so let's go. Let's duplicate this, and let's call this shoot targets. Remember, if it's not a false objective, then that means it's going to show what you write over here. It's going to show it on your UI. And let's drag and drop this one, shoot targets. Okay, this is basically what you need. This is basically how you set up objectives. So when this one ends, it's going to tell you to go back to the exit, and it's going to tell you to it's going to load the next level and the next level and so on and so on. Now let's close this and go to start, hit play. Okay, campaign, new game. Let's run the first one pretty quick. Let's go up. Okay, objective complete. You can see the new cube we've added. And yeah, there was something wrong, and that has to go with the script, I believe. Kill targets, add range, object to WI. This didn't work for some reason, so let's just remove this. To be honest, I do not want to debug this right now, so let's just leave this and let's go back and reset a little bit quickly. Let's set this let's make sure we drop all our objects, objectives, kill targets. Well, all of them are over here, so that's weird. Let's see the other solo scene 3 objectives, not scene 3, we want scene 2 objectives, targets. Let's add them also over here. 2, 1. Okay, let's save, let's remove them, and let's see. We of course have to reclimb again. Okay, objective complete. Shoot 1. Shoot the second. Shoot the third. And the fourth. Objective complete. So yeah, probably a bug somewhere. I think it might reset the values or whatever, I don't know. Okay, we climb the next platform. We are on the new scene, and you can see that it says to me go to the shooting range. You can see where the V is. You can see down to the right where the blue is. Okay, the indicator. Let's go over there. Climb. Our new targets. Well, let's make this a little bit more interesting. Let's change weapons, just for the sakes. Okay, objective complete. Exit the door. Let's take a run. And while we're running, load the next one, and the next one. This one on the actual final objective, okay, which is the load next level. I have the next level to be as menu. If you remember, on our actual script, on the menu we are checking in case somebody has written menu over here, and instead of loading a new level, we're just loading the menu scene. Okay, it's simple as that. So that's how you set up the objectives, how you set up an architecture for objectives, and how you handle all of them together without having to worry about writing and rewriting the same scripts all over again to basically do the same job. Okay, so I'm going to end this one here. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, and if you like to see more, okay, then your support is really much needed. And the ways you can support me is either on Patreon or by grabbing a project or 2 or 3, maybe 4 from Gumroad. Okay, so I can continue keep making all these nice projects and have them be as big as this one. So I'll see you on the next one.